Okay, everybody, welcome back. This is Gavin Mehl. We got a great show today with our friend Brett Banfee. We just got back from the London Blockchain Conference. Brett, good to see you, buddy. Welcome. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Gavin.
Yeah, welcome back. And we want to talk everything about the London Blockchain Conference. Also, you were a judge in the hackathon that we had in San Francisco. There's a winner in the hackathon that was announced. Also, potentially do another hackathon. And just as a fun story, we Brett had a fun story that you shared with me about your about getting some perfume, and I ended up traveling down there to central London to try to find it, and ended up not selling it at that specific Joe Malone store. So I had a nice time at the British Museum and walked all around there, and you ended up getting it on the way back to the airport. So sounds like we had a nice dinner. Ran into you at that in the middle of the streets of London. I was lost, and you were like you were coming out of a store.
Yeah. So, that's what I love about those types of events is that it's just a spontaneous energy. There's so many people who are, advancing these ideas of freedom, these ideas of Web3, decentralization, distributed consensus, all these things that are going to be the bedrocks and the foundations for our future digital economy. And, they're all sort of crammed like sardines into this one little location. And just like any situation, you naturally have this beautiful friction that gets created out of those moments. And you can just be bumping into people. There were even some people that were part of that uprising and spontaneous energy that didn't have any understanding or knowledge about BSV. They just sort of get sucked in because the gravity of the excitement and the energy is so palpable. And next thing you know, they're getting onboarded to BSV, but not just from like the guy down the street or something like this, but this is like really heavy hitters in the space that are like talking about UTXO sets and all of this stuff. It's like it's like getting onboarded to like the theory of relativity from like Einstein and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's how intimate this event was. That's the magic of it. You're really rubbing elbows with just some amazing people. So, why don't you talk? Can you talk a little bit about some of the highlights? I mean, I know you were you know involved there full time. So, can you recap on some of the highlights that you had from the London Blockchain Conference?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to see old friends is always kind of the number one thing for me. It's people that you pick up a conversation, like last time you saw them, and then the next time you see them, it's like you're still on the same exact sentence. And what I love about it is that, okay, so we were talking about how, when you're at an event like that, you really are seeing other people who are, just really dynamic, inquisitive, curious people who, don't just accept an answer that's given to them just because, but really people who look below the surface, try to figure out how things work on their own. And, there's so many barriers to really understanding this technology, and when you get to the surface or when you get to the heart of events like that, you're really sort of finding, the like creme de la creme of these people who have the ability to apply, critical thinking and to, ignore obvious, traps and dangerous thinking and, fallacies, etc., and really find the crux of the heart of the issue. But although they all tend to sort of have Bitcoin or BSV as sort of like, a common thread, they also come from a variety and a range of cultures. So, you're learning things about, Todd Price, for example, from the BSV Association's education team. He's this like, dynamic, wonderful, engaging personality that we had at DevCon, teaching this really fascinating stuff about using payment channels, but leaving sig flag hash, to leave certain transactions unsigned so that you don't actually put the content on chain, but that you are exchanging it through a payment channel with the direct peer. these like really creative solutions around BSV and using BSV as plumbing for, the next phase of the internet. But then when you get into these side conversations with these people, you're learning about so much about history, and you mentioned being at, the British Museum. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I got recommended to go to that British Museum a number of times by different people. But a lot of times you're not just getting sort of the the sort of like status quo realities, but you're really learning about things, the history of our of our cultures, etc., but from a below the surface type of place.
Yeah, British Museum, and it was, I went down there to see the Rosetta Stone. It's a famous stone that they have a lot of hieroglyphics in the history, and there was all people around it, and they, supposedly found it in Egypt, or Napoleon had found it, and the actual stone was there, and it has all sorts of different writing. And I was able to read the Greek writing, and it means something in the code there. It probably means something to different people, but there were so many other incredible artifacts there. But yeah, that was the main thing about the British History Museum. Just incredible. It'd been there since 1800. It had been in that museum. So fascinating piece of history. You mentioned something a little bit about the plumbing, BSV and Bitcoin being the plumbing of the internet. So there was some guys there from Terranode. I think one of them was Siggy. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but there were some other people working with him. I mean, how big is this Terranode project? I mean, it just seems like it seems a lot. I mean, how big is this thing? I mean, what is really going on from the inside? Can you share a little bit about what that's happening about this right now, and maybe what's already happened? I probably a better way to put it. What's
Yeah,
happened?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are very lucky and blessed to have Siggy on the BSV Association team, leading that Terranode project, and as well as his two brothers. So both all three Oscarson brothers from Iceland were there. And so it's Siggy, Alskir, and Ollie. And they were some of the people that made the most memorable impression on me, because a lot of times at these events, you're going to back to the hotel, and we just so happen to be staying at the hotel. We're part of the same team, so we're exchanging ideas with each other till sometimes 3:30, 4 in the morning, really like not wanting the night to end. And the just being able to kind of get their eyes on and ears on the ground, and hearing what's going on with the development, with the emergence of this technology. It's really something that I cherish really, really closely. The Terranode project was one of the most important demonstrations that was being presented at the BSV Association's booth. And what we're hearing from various different customers is that while first of all there are certain non-starters that are a requirement. For example, proof of work has to be a proof of work system. Has to be a scalable solution. And the current implementation of the BSV node software is really tremendous. It's fantastic. It's fabulous. And it tops out at around 13,000 transactions per second in its peak periods, and it can sustain transactions in the 6 to 7,000 range. But there are all these use cases for which 6 to 7,000 transactions per second just really doesn't cut it. And what you have with Terranode is you have the actual infrastructure to support these novel use cases, things like Internet of Things, for example. And we spoke to some customers at the conference that were detailing some of their plans for how to take advantage of Internet of Things. And maybe I'll give a little bit of a spoiler. Some of these relate actually back to insurance policies, because you have, for example, these massive event spaces where lots of different, for example, just think of a concert venue or something like this. Lots of different data points are happening all throughout the concert venue, and you can actually record that not just on an individual private database that's held by the concert venue itself, but you can record that directly to a public ledger that can be verified immutably by multiple different stakeholders in the effort of reducing insurance premiums. So these are some of those types of business use cases that are, we're right on the surface of actually, satisfying from the Web3 marketplace. But at the 5,000 transactions per second, we're still not quite able to provide the scalable infrastructure that allows for those types of streaming data points to come in. Of course, you have to have extremely low, cheap fees. A lot of times the data that's being recorded will never get accessed again, because of course you only really need to access the data for which there's an insurance claim being made for that data. So, those are some of the things that we're seeing in terms of the business use cases for the emergence of Terranode. And what we're hearing from various different business partners who are speaking at the event is they're essentially saying, we were doing some testing. David Case famously really been helpful in terms of helping to bootstrap some of these tests, et cetera. But the testing infrastructure that's available today on mainnet compared to what needs to happen in the next 6 to 18 months, it's a massive shift. So the testing really isn't taking place. So as a result, these projects, these IoT projects, and these business use cases, these are really being put on pause as the technology is coming to the forefront. And this is exactly what we saw. We talked about this on a previous show with the emergence of broadband internet, where real business use cases for the internet were just on pause. The internet existed; it had existed since the 1950s, et cetera. But the commercial applicability really wasn't there because there wasn't the ability to handle the type of throughput that this was going to create. And when we're talking about actually transitioning the world's global payments infrastructure on top of this technology, first of all, what we're talking about is a complete change in cost reductions, complete shift in efficiency, data management efficiency. Gorilla Pool gave a great presentation, and they really stand out as a organization, a company that is looking ahead of the curve on this and really seeing that, just in the same way that we have these internet service providers, these ISPs that were, built into a reality once the broadband internet came around, we have the potential to have these Bitcoin service providers for the tracking and management of data. And effectively what that means is that the various different companies that are all keeping their own IT staff, they're keeping their own, accounting staff, they're keeping, all these teams that are in charge of ensuring the integrity of their personal data, their company data. What you're getting the efficiencies of offloading that to service providers, just in the same exact way that currently we're offloading the cloud computing functionalities to service providers such as Amazon and some of these other providers. So, the business use cases for Terranode are fabulous. Seeing all of the team members from Terranode there and hearing all, for example, Jeff was wonderful to chat with Jeff at the booth, Siggy, Dan, just seeing the types of minds that are wrapping themselves around this problem, the invention that Satoshi gave us, being able to combine that through the Mandela network topology with a overlay services network to have a bridge between this high throughput data volume, high uptime capabilities of Terranode project all the way to the edges of the network, which are, peer-to-peer cash, as it says in the white paper, exchanges of information. And, we heard from, people like Darren Kellenschweller, it's not just simple payment verification. It's also, which we could say is SPV from Section 8 of the white paper. It's also simple data verification, which we can say, is another novel use case of exchanging information on the edges of the network. And seeing that project actually moving into, out of the concept of theoretically possible, as it has been for 15 years, as Bitcoin has languished in this small blocker fiefdom, to this actual high throughput meritocracy of BSV. I couldn't be more proud and more thrilled to be a part of that.
So I heard rumors that someone was spending $2 million a month to get this Terranode project going. I don't know what they were. Is that possible? And if so, who the heck's putting that money up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very possible. I don't know the exact figures, but that number doesn't surprise me at all. When we did launch the booth, the BSV Association's booth, and specifically the Terranode component of that booth, in partnership with Amazon Web Services, and as well with Aerospike. Aerospike is the high throughput database that's being used for the management of the UTXO set. Because again, we're talking about millions of transactions per second, but every transaction could potentially have, dozens of inputs and dozens of outputs. So it's a degree of data management that really is unlike anything that the world's ever experienced before. And I think that the Terranode team was very proud of the fact that they really stressed Amazon to its breaking limits, and Aerospike, where these are the amount of real volume that's coming through here. Now, it is volume on a test network, but it is, whether or not it's test network, it is still a real pushing of all of this data that's still being managed on a test network. It's sort of exceeding some of the capacities to actually manufacture and to produce, that volume of data. Yeah, these companies that are partnering with this project, it's
Dude,
really, again,
this is
it's
so. I mean, Brett, this is like. I mean, I don't know, man. I have these moments. I'm sitting at a bar with freaking Alex and Alex Ravel, and we're just like, and he's like, and I'm having these like visions, like this seems like we're on like a big stage. Okay, I'm like trying to be humble, like, oh, it was just some couple guys on the internet, but this seems a lot bigger than that, dude. Like these, what did you mention? AWS and who? I heard the other one.
Aerospike.
They're big, aren't they? Big time.
Absolutely. They're massive, and they have, enterprise customers that are relying on their infrastructure. And these enterprise customers are being onboarded onto the use cases for public blockchain scalable solutions, the enterprise management of a public blockchain solution for their business. And a lot of us that have been in BSV have seen this all along. And what we're seeing is we're stepping out of the realm where this is theoretically possible. We're stepping into the realm where we can spin up proofs of concepts for these various different businesses and show them how what they're going to do is have increased reliability, increased security, lower fees, all of these things that are the pillars of business, right? And so, when it comes down to is really provide a product and a service that is useful and necessary for business to thrive and to flourish, and you're going to find a customer. So that's what we're seeing. It's been in front of our noses the whole time. It's just been hanging there as a section 8 of the white paper. And even in the abstract, high volume, high throughput, low fees, high scalability, high security, all of these things. But what we've seen so far is this speed bump of, when you haven't yet built up momentum, even a speed bump can be a laborious hill to get over, right? But when you've gotten your momentum, when you're working on all cylinders, when you're solving customers' needs left and right, and when you're putting, your project behind you and you're putting the customer's needs first and in front of you, what you're seeing is that, that really what we're facing is an onboarding problem. We're not facing a technical problem. We're not facing, we blow it out of the water when it comes to the technical solutions. We're facing an onboarding problem, but the best part about it is that the best way to onboard people is show them that they can save money, and people like saving money. And, the novel use cases all of that stuff, all of the new business models that are going to be made possible by microtransactions and all of this stuff. I mean, that can all come afterwards. And there's going to be innovative people who build. Speaking of the sCrypt hackathon, we can talk about some of that, but there's going to be innovative people who bring those business models to the forefront and introduce this new paradigm to the world. But, when it comes to really onboarding people, showing them that they can do the exact same thing they're already doing, they can just save money doing it. It's a no-brainer.
So before we go to the hackathon, what is, are you able to disclose who is paying that $2 million a month? Do you know who's behind that? I mean, are you worried about them running out of money or saying, oh, we don't want to pay for this anymore? Because that's a freaking huge nut,
Sure.
that someone's got to pay.
Sure, absolutely. And I will, before I go into that, I'll just say, it was also a huge nut, the infrastructure costs that were necessary to lay the transcontinental railroad, right? Yeah, somebody had to go out there before trains were actually carrying this product from the New York City to San Francisco. Someone had to go out there and finance it all and say, hey, you know what? I see a vision that's possible by this new technology, these, the locomotives, and it's going to transform business as we know it. I'm going to pay for all this infrastructure to get put out in place. And I would venture to say that $2 million for the cost to run all this infrastructure and stuff, the cost to build the transcontinental railroad was probably $2 million way back in the 1800s, but that $2 million probably buys you a whole lot more, in terms of real economic value back then than it does today. So I would say it's actually fairly small, and it's surprising. But this is what you get when you have increases in efficiency, right? You can scale costs down. But I don't think it's any secret that we the BSV Association is the organization that is developing and testing the Terranode project. And so these are costs that are coming right out of the BSV Association's budget in terms of actually putting that infrastructure into place to allow. What's really wonderful is to allow and the BSV Association is an NGO, so they're not laying all of this infrastructure so that they can have a monopoly on it or anything like this. They're laying this infrastructure because they want to allow buyers to meet sellers. And this is just a new digital landscape, a new digital frontier that's going to enable buyers to meet these sellers. But one of the things that, before we again switch topics, I want to touch on, because we had a really great presentation at DevCon, and I encourage anyone that is watching to take a second, head to YouTube after this and check out that DevCon presentation, and specifically take a look at the presentation that was led by Angus Brown. Because he is the head of the technical standards committee for the BSV Association, and he really laid out in very plain English and very simple terms the importance of standards. And this is really what what BSV Association is at the heart of what is being developed here, is that it's interested in developing and ushering in these standards that can allow commerce to be exchanged from between buyer and seller, but have both parties be protected, have a easy transfer of value, taking advantage of all the smart contracting capabilities. But at the end, if we have 100 or 200 different standards for how all this information is being sent across the network, then really we have no standards. So what Angus articulated really well, I thought, was that it's not up to him to decide what is the best standard. What it is up to him to do is to look around and see, how is the market reacting to this? Do market participants enjoy this token versus this token? What we can see is that, this is why these sCrypt hackathons and things like that are so important, because, we can't exactly go around standardizing things that are still like theories, right? We have to have, proofs of concept. We have to get this technology into people's hands. And then only, when you have begun to build something, do you realize what problems lie ahead of you? So you have to dig the foundation for your the castle, so to speak, before you can realize the problems that come at the second and the third floor, so but you're never going to solve all of those problems in a purely theoretical space. And sometimes that means that you have to take some some wrong turns. You have to head in one direction and realize that's not the direction, and maybe we could say that BTC and some of these other forks, etc., they are an exact example of that. I don't think that they, maybe there are some people that had, that didn't have the purest of intentions or something like that. But I would probably say 95% of people that go along with those strategies that BTC espouses, they're not bad people. They're not, what they are is trying to absorb the value that you get in numbers, but the thing is that you cannot, it's not just about the numbers that we have today, right? It's about, because we can build a bridge to nowhere, and we could have a lot of people telling us that it's a great idea to build a bridge to nowhere, and guess what, those numbers feel real good while we're harvesting the wood that's going to be necessary for the bridge to nowhere. But by the time we actually start to build it, that's when suddenly the numbers start to fall off a little bit, right? Because it becomes more and more of it dawns on us the reality of the situation that we've taken as an undertaking upon ourselves. So this is why, what the pathway that we're going with, a highly scalable network, laying the infrastructure, just like the Transcontinental Railroad, that allows this value layer to sit on top of the network. We talk a lot about how, a lot of the people that we're competing with in this space, in terms of messaging, in terms of narrative, they're really trying to say that the value is the asset, right? That the token itself is the real value. Whereas we have always believed that, the value is the data, that it's the data that's sitting on top of the network. The network itself is just the transmitter of that value. And, this is going to lead to the novel use cases that we're seeing in the years to come. But we are certainly turning the heads of some really major players in this space. I could go into detail and into depth as far as exactly who and exactly how close we are to those aha moments with some of our business partners.
Let's save some of those. I mean, I think
we'll save it for another show, but it's a fascinating time to be here. A lot of people have been putting in the hard work to get us to this point, and we're so thankful for that.
Cool, man. All right. So the DevCon was a huge success. All those great businesses there. It was great to meet, Rui da Silva. Really cool to see him and some of the stuff he's working on. And like you mentioned, Angus Brown, which was a great one. And just the people there at the DevCon. I thought that Monday was like Monday for the next time people go to this. Do not miss that. That is like the core of the conference. You want to be at the DevCon. So, on that note, now take us back into the hackathon. We did the San Francisco hackathon. That was back in March. And then I'm hearing that 3 guys won on a team from that event. And so can you take us into that? You were one of the judges. What happened and how did it go? What's it all about?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so it just further cements, what I was talking about before of the amazing people that get drawn to this space, people that, they don't accept just because I said so as an answer, really get below the surface and try and figure out how things work. And, what's really beautiful and wonderful about this technology that we're right on the precipice of is that this really is about, the phase that we're in as a people, as a species, both in terms of philosophically, in terms of technically as well. It's really about, I think, modularization and micro architecture, and to being able to have extractable components. So, the problem that we have with hub and spoke models for networks is that everything's dependent on the whole. Right? You can't replace just a piece without it compromising the entire whole. And so that's what we see with, the participants that joined us out in San Francisco. They're people who are inspired by the modularization of ideas. And, it's really, if you think back to one of the great modularizations of ideas is the golden rule, right? It's like, something that was, espoused in lots and lots of wisdom traditions the world over. But, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. You're never going to know, in all circumstances, like, for example, is it okay to hit someone on the back? No, that's bad. But what if they're choking? Is it okay to hit someone on the back? Yes, that's good, right? So if you only remember, if you memorize only the things that you can and can't do, then, like, in a way, you're building yourself, you're painting yourself into a corner. And so the modularization of these concepts philosophically, technically, and we saw great examples of them at the sCrypt hackathon, they're really about not just having like a top-down view of what should and shouldn't do, what technology is and isn't capable of, but it's really about taking the BSV layer as a foundational layer and thinking, what can we build up from that? The grassroots, how can we build on top of that? So, one of my favorite people and individuals from both when I went out to visit in San Francisco and we had a great time at the Argentinian steakhouse was Ryan Wald. Ryan Wald, I think, led that team that I believe Archie was involved with that. And yeah, I can't recall do you recall who the last team? Kevin. Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
Yeah. Kevin.
Yeah. And another person who someone who has given so much to BSV. So they
Ryan
came up,
Wold led the team.
Ryan Wald led the team. That's right. And
Okay, I
Ryan,
didn't know that.
he is, someone that just has fascinating ideas around. I think he even had a product or a project at one point that you can check out. It was called Jurisprudence, I believe.
Yeah. It's on his web. Yep.
Yeah, about civic, he's looking at the waste of, we have a need as a public, as a people to have, infrastructure specifically around, our local legislative process, our local governance and all these things. But, there's this propensity for that to accumulate waste, right? Because there's not necessarily an emphasis on spending properly, spending correctly, because in the end you really don't have a system that is constrained by the actual limitations of the network. In what you have is a system that oftentimes is oriented towards the taxpayer dollars that can get funneled into the various different projects. And as long as we can keep those taxpayer dollars coming in, then how the way in which those communities actually interface at the local level and how people are getting, whether or not they're having better access to health services or better access to sanitary public spaces or better access to clean water and clean air and all these things that are important elements to having a healthy living, that the sort of the baby gets tossed out with the bathwater sometimes. So Ryan, a person who really studies these types of ideas, ways in which we can improve efficiency around simple concepts. So the simple concept that they came up with was gassed up, and it was just a payment pump for a fuel pump at like a petrol station or something like this. But it was pre-authorizing the payment instead of through a credit card or something like that. It was pre-authorizing through a locking of Satoshis and then and a direct exchange of payment, and so partially signed transactions and a fully signed transaction once the actual petrol had been pumped and the exact amount was known. So one of the things that I loved, and this was one of the projects that I loved, but, I'm one of the least technical people when it comes to, who the other judges were. We had, kind of a who's who. So I'm sitting there going like, well, I love this idea, right? Because it's something that I personally can connect with. I've been at a pump, all of this stuff. But, I figured that even though I loved it so much, that maybe, the technical teams would maybe go for something that was a little more technically stretched out, but it was beloved by all judges. So it just goes to show you too that the idea is we don't need to necessarily do technical solutions just for technical solutions sake, right? It's oftentimes about applying a unique functionality to a common problem that all people experience, and the way in which we can approach that in a novel from a novel point of view. I think that Ryan, Kevin, and Archie, first of all, it's tremendous to be out there with them, to get to know them. Kevin is one of the team members for the BSV Association, so I get to spend a lot of time with him and talking with him as well. But yeah, I couldn't be happier or prouder for them. Then we have a really nice one that got in second place, the CPU, Ty Everett's CPU, right?
What's the CPU?
This was it was debuted again. For those that are watching and want to check this out, check out the DevCon from London Blockchain Conference. Ty Everett, Project Babbage, gave a presentation of their Bitcoin CPU. And essentially, this is one of the ones where, like, first of all, I love this one too, although I can't probably do as good a job explaining it as I can how a petrol pump works. I'm a little better at explaining that one. But yeah, what it is it's using it's building basically a computer, a full computing stack, including loops and all of these capabilities that computers typically have, but it's a virtual computer that's using the infrastructure of BSV as basically the virtual components of the computer. So you're able to do things like, distributed computation. You're able to check if certain compute is valid or not, and if it's not valid, you can proceed down various different logic gates. And we see this again. You can look it up on YouTube. There's ways that you can build a computer out of just a set of dominoes, whereas the dominoes end up adding certain numbers based on their inputs. You get certain outputs. So it's not necessarily something that's that novel that you're able to create a computer with excuse me about that. It's not necessarily that novel that you can create a computer with, virtual or non-typical componentry. But what is pretty novel is just the range and functionality that Ty was able to include, because of course you take advantage of the ability with Bitcoin script, which is only possible on BSV. I believe the scripting functionality was all disabled on the other chains. What you have is the ability to do like highly, Turing complete computation, but on top of a full stack that is entirely made out of BSV. And therefore, because it's all BSV centric and BSV native, it's all distributed. You can have specialization. So you could have, certain processors that are really great at processing like ASICs, just like that's a special piece of hardware that's very good at brute forcing the Bitcoin difficulty algorithm. But then you could have other specialized hardware that is really good at, computing image rendering or things like this. So what we're going to eventually, especially with the ability to do things like pixel streaming, something that's fairly new and possible now with Amazon, the ability to open up payment channels peer-to-peer through IPv6 and some of this other stuff. What we're going to be able to do is do, like high degree of streaming that is coming directly peer-to-peer. So for example, if you're in a game like Fortnite or something like this, instead of all participants, centrally connecting to this one center hub, and then you have things like who's ever has the least ping or the least latency, they have an advantage because they're seeing the data and the material quicker than anyone else. What you'll have instead is you'll have sort of a distributed network, where instead of there being a central location that everything's connecting to, it's all of these various different people connecting all to each other via these payment channels, and that you're going to see high volume, high throughput of streaming data that's getting rendered on the fly through the browser.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so that's a good point right there for the hackathon. I want to kind of explore that a little bit more on the blending of tokenized. And so because the idea is that we're talking right now maybe like about doing another hackathon in December. And so with that, what about the idea of doing something around the lines that Tokenized did? Didn't Tokenized submit something like a concept and then they won? Was it a hackathon that they won, or they won some
Yes, I
event?
believe Tokenized began as a hackathon project. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, they obviously yes, they started like that and then they won and now they're a success. So can you talk a little bit about what are they doing over there at Tokenized with James Building? And
Yeah, sure. So
they were,
Tokenized is one of the my favorite projects. First of all, if you haven't done a sales call with James Belding, I highly recommend it. Reach out to him. And I think it's james.belding@tokenized.com, and just ask for a demo of the Tokenized platform. It's so tremendous in terms of the depth in which it's been all the way thought through. What it enables is, tokenization of anything. James has some very specific ideas about tokenization. I think that his view is that the token is just a pointer to something else, right? It itself is only the pointer. And something that a way that we could describe this is like, when you go to a carnival or something like this, you go to the window, you exchange your money and you get some tickets, and then you can use those tickets to get on the rides. The tickets themselves are not the rides, right? They're just the pointers that allow the merging, the blending of the interface of the monetary exchange, which requires specific rule sets, right? Because there's the person who's in charge of the money. They have to have like maybe a camera on them at all times, or some specific things that relate only to that section of the exchange. The rest of the exchange, it's still, there's still rules and processes in place for those things, but there's like a different degree of granularity that those rules have to go down to. So that's sort of the idea that he has. His main thesis is that right now we have standardization, and this goes back to what we were talking about the BSV Association, with the importance of standardization. We have really great standardization across the public equity markets. So if I'm looking to invest in Apple stock, et cetera, I could go to E-Trade, or I could go to Fidelity, or I could go to eToro, or I could go to tons of different platforms, right? And generally, I'm going to have mostly the same experience. I might have a different interface or a different login platform or portal or something like this, but it's all generally standardized that I'm getting basically the exact same amount, the exact same end result. And that doesn't exist across the private equity markets. And this is true despite the fact that the private equity markets are, I don't know, approximately maybe like 50 to 100 times the size of the public equity markets. So we have the public equity markets added up to each other, the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, and some of these other major, the London Stock Exchange, some of these other major exchange markets. You're talking about, $4 or $5 trillion or something like this. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but, the the private equity markets, are just a multiple of that, a significant multiple of that. So you're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars, and that includes across, all of the various different mechanisms that those private exchanges and agreements can manifest. But what you have is a lack of an underlying level playing field, the lack of a uniform standardization for those private equity markets. So some people are using Adobe, some people are using paper and pen, right? They're still mailing things in the mail, the snail mail. Some people are using DocuSign, right? So so James really, I think, very brilliantly realizes that there is a massive opportunity to be the standardization for private equity. And that means that you have to be you have to be more competitive than the host and range of various different mechanisms, right? So you have to be better than the pen and the paper. You have to be better than Adobe, better than email, better than DocuSign, better, like you don't just have one thing that you need to be better than. You need to be better than the entire gambit if you're going to be the standardization model for the private equity markets. And, where else can you find something that beats every other competitor than BSV? So I think James correctly identified that. But not just are you getting the utility that comes with the standardization across various different private sectors, but you're also getting the unique functionality that's not possible through any other mechanism. So DocuSign, things like this, they don't have automatic distributions of dividends, right? They don't have terms and conditions that's written directly into, the asset so that the asset can be exchanged peer to peer, but that still doesn't break a covenant that was created at the time that the contract was formed, right? In the exact same way that, I can exchange $1 with you, and the same covenant that existed when I received the dollar still exists with you to be able to spend that dollar. Well, that now is possible through James's platform, through Tokenized. We're seeing some of the first initial use cases of this platform being rolled out here very soon, as we're seeing the announcement and the launch of the money token, which is MNEE. And I encourage you to take a look at that. That's being supported through some companies in the space, such as Rock Wallet, who was at the London Blockchain Conference, had a great chance to reconnect with their team. And also Handcash will be supporting the money token.
What's the status on that? That's a stable coin, right?
Yeah, that would be a US dollar stable coin. So, again, we're facing an onboarding problem. We're not facing a technical problem. And we are facing a standardization problem in some respects, because we do need to make sure that although this technology, what is possible with it is so tremendous and wonderful, we still need to filter that down so that we're able to have a single standard on which all of this information can be exchanged, et cetera. So, and that's why Angus was talking about that, the importance of having people present feedback to the standards committee. But, but beyond just the problem that we have of making sure that we have a robust standardization tool set, especially for developers, and that's been announced at DevCon as well. The TypeScript library, the recently launched Go library, I believe Python and Rust are some of the next libraries that are coming up. And I've even heard some rumors and whispers of, potentially some PHP libraries, maybe even some libraries that are native to something like the Apple iPhone or something like that. Because Rue De Silva, as you mentioned earlier, he's building an app on BSV, and but he'll want to build a mobile app. So we need to also present some of these libraries that are mobile friendly and mobile native. But yeah, we're seeing the onboarding problem is really about, okay, well, once I'm in the BSV small world network and I'm in this ecosystem, sending payments lightning fast and sending them multi-signature and automatic distribution of rewards and, smart contracts and all this stuff. This is so phenomenal, but there's still this barrier of getting actually into this small world network, right? A lot of people have never heard of BSV. They've never even, let alone Bitcoin or BSV or BTC or Ethereum. They don't know what any of this stuff is, right? The target market out there is, just a person that wants a movie on their TV, right? They just want to click on the movie that they want to watch on Amazon Prime. And at the end of the day, they don't care at all what's really firing under the hood. That's our target demographic. That's who we're building all this infrastructure for, to enable peer-to-peer business distribution. And, this first layer of the tokenized solution, presenting a hurdle so that now you can actually, earn funds through your applications and micropayments and things like this. But instead of having to teach the user, oh, well, this is called BSV and it works like this. And, you just get to say it's $1, like, what $1 is. Yeah, this is $1. Don't worry about it. End of the day works exactly like any other dollar that you've ever seen before, except it has these unique other functions as well. So, those are, again, sort of like, we're entering into this next phase of the maturation of the the Web3 and the digital economy market. So Web3, as we say, it's about not just reading information online, which is what Web 1 was, but not just writing information online, which is like Facebook, like this is how I'm feeling today. That's what Web 2 was. But it's also the ability to own that data or to own elements or components of that data. That's what tokenization is. That's the ability to tokenize down your dollars. And at the end of the day, we're not trying to what we're going to be the infrastructure on which the rest of the global economy rests.
Fascinating, Brett. So this could be huge. I mean, the stable coin could be coming out, it sounds like. So very soon. It looks like they're just probably waiting for a little bit more of the framework to get set up. But all right, just kind of going towards the end here. I wanted to ask you about someone else who I met there that I felt was very interesting, and I'm a little bit confused on what they do. Smart Ledger and Gregory Ward. What is it that they're doing?
Yeah, so really excited about, first of all, Gregory Ward, one of my best friends in the space. I absolutely love Greg. Phenomenal person, really deep thinker. Someone, again, like all of these people who we met out there, they're not people who, who got given an answer and just accepted it. They really have to get to the bottom of things and to figure it out. One of my favorite speeches, or not speeches, but conversations, is between Greg Ward and Dr. Clemens Lay. I was really interested in that conversation because I was really interested in the concept of using the the Bitcoin system as a Turing complete sort of head, and so Dr. Clemens Lay and Greg Ward go through that. So if you haven't got a chance to check out that video, I highly recommend it. That's about 4 or 5 years old now at this point, and Clemens no longer is involved in the space. But yeah, Greg is the CTO for Smart Ledger. So they've developed Certahash. Certahash is another product that was developed in concert with IBM. And what it's doing is, again, it's infrastructure that's taking advantage of unique functionality of the immutability, the distributed consensus, and the the security of blockchain technology, but applying it to novel problems that exist in Web 2 and in traditional data markets. So you have the average time to detect a breach of a computer network. So some place like a financial firm or something like that has massive infrastructure in terms of making sure that their computers are secure. The average time that it takes to detect a breach of that network is something around to the effect of 9 to 10 months. It's something in the range of 270 days or something like that. So what the Certahash program, or what the Certahash application does, is just sits inside the file network, or the file log system for the actual main database for those networks that it's securing, and it's constantly taking hashes of the networks, and that it's putting those hashes onto the chain. So, it combines that with some novel capabilities to do, admin signatures and things like that. And, we're moving away. What we're seeing out of this London Blockchain Conference and some of these other Project Babbage presentations that we saw, Smart Ledger, we're seeing that we're moving away from this concept of just, like a static, email login and a password that gives you your credentials, et cetera. And we're really moving forward down into the signing of things on chain. So the credentials that you have as the administrator of the network, but that credential that you have is a signature that can be validated on chain, right? So it's not just a password that you remembered or something like that. So we're seeing that these files are able to be updated, and they're able to, when they are updated, they're able to be signed by the administrator or whoever is given the approval for that. But then if they are actually ever breached and there is a change to that data set, then that can be instantly detected. So within 10 seconds or something like this. So Smart Ledger is the pioneer of that product. One of the great things about them is that they're really, they come with a background in enterprise sales. So, they're just looking at BSV and blockchain as the next step that that applications are going to have to provide. If your competitor is providing, like airbags and all for or in the front and the passenger side of the vehicle, like you have to start thinking, okay, are we going to start putting some airbags in ours? What you want to be keeping lock and step with the tooling that your competitors are providing. So Certahash stepping forward and providing these new capabilities that are blockchain enabled, but it's not just because that they envision that that they are going to solve the entire world's needs, but what they're seeing is that this is the entry point, that products are going to have to start delivering these tools, and that it's how you're going to actually get into speak with these enterprise customers, because they're going to start looking around and saying, okay, well, this isn't provided natively to me by my McAfee solution or by some of these other solutions that we provide. So how do I go out and find that? And it gives you a moving advantage, a first mover advantage, to actually be able to secure that customer, and then and then can keep that customer with your great customer service.
Nice. All right, cool, man. Well, I mean, there were some amazing announcements there with the end chain sign. I think that's kind of along the lines of what you were mentioning there, and some of the things one of the things Owen Vaughn announced as well. So, in closing, in the last few minutes here, is there anything else you wanted to share as a recap from the hackathon or the DevCon, and that people really should reflect on?
Yeah, I'm just really proud and thrilled. London Blockchain Conference, if you have not been at this event, I really highly encourage you to reach out to me, Manifestable, on Twitter. We can start getting planned right away to get there next year. It's a fabulous time. And, we're seeing that we're moving out of this phase of things being theoretically possible, and we're into this phase where you're able to spin up proofs of concept. So I encourage you to reach out to me if you are looking to put a proof of concept together, if you need some assistance with how to build your stack, if you want some recommendations of some great developer teams to work with, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a business solution idea, if you would like to make some contacts in the space. And if you want to meet Gavin Mehl, reach out to me, because I'm the guy. I can get you in touch with him. He's, he is, you're doing great stuff in the space. So I really want to thank you. But I do have people reaching out to me and going, how do I get in contact with Gavin? I have this great idea. I want to send his way. So, and this is my role. I'm the head of community. So at the end of the day, I'm inspired and motivated by all these ideas. I want to see this technology picked up and ran with. I want to see your success. Being out in London Blockchain Conference was so phenomenal. Like you said, talking with, heads of Amazon Web Services and things like this, where, we're having a coffee and we're just really like cutting down to brass tacks, learning what's possible with this shift in technology. It's a complete paradigm shift. It's going to turn everything on its head. And, just like when you walk into a river or something like this, and when your foot first hits that that soot, that silt at the bottom of the river, right? It kicks up all of the dust. And suddenly, when the dust kicks up, when a new paradigm shift happens, the old models that we've come to rely on, that, we're just going to funnel our data to big, technocratic institutions and just cross our fingers and hope and pray that everything's okay. We can unseat that. We can build new structures for processing data, for our patterns of behavior, for how we actually interact with each other, and stuff that can be modeled around this modularization, not just from a technical standpoint, but also from a philosophical standpoint. And when we think about how we model that in the world, it's important for us to go back to ourselves, the golden rule. How would we want to be treated? And then if we can do our best effort every day to wake up and treat others the way that we would want to be treated, then we're already living in this Web3 paradigm shift. And, encourage you to connect with me afterwards.
Right on, Brett. And how do people find you?
So find me at the Discord, discord.gg/BSV. I'm manifestable at the top of that channel. I can help you with any questions you have across the entire BSV ecosystem. You can also reach out to me, Brett.Banfee at bsvblockchain.org, as well as manifestable on Twitter, as in if it is capable of being manifested, then it is manifestable. That's your boy. Thanks. And look
All
forward
right.
to hearing from you.
And where will we see you, Brett?
You're gonna see me and Gavin at the top or at the Lebanese restaurant, whichever
Oh
one
yeah.
you get to first, guys.
That was great. That Lebanese restaurant. Thanks for dinner over there, Brett. And I will see you at the top.